Personally, I find landscape photography quite difficult during the summer. It's not just the early starts, but everything's also really lush and green, and for me that doesn't make a particularly good landscape photograph. But what I like to do during the summer is to come out and practice my photographic technique and to try a few different things. So that's why this morning I've come to Orton Scar on the edge of the Yorkshire Dales. The Yorkshire Dales is limestone country. Everywhere that you look, you see these limestone pavements where the rock has been exposed through erosion. And so today, what I'm going to do is have a practice using foreground in my compositions. It's actually a Monday morning today. Today I'm working from home, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to come out because the sun is up so early. And of course, being a Monday, conditions are absolutely beautiful. Generally what I like to do is to include a primary subject in my photographs to act as a focal point. Something like the Langdale Pikes, or the jetty at Bramble Howe on Derwent Water, or this monument here on Beacon Hill near Orton Scar. Now usually what I do with my photographs is I try to eliminate as many distractions as I possibly can, and I do that by using a slightly longer focal length than many other people. So at the moment I'm at around 50mm, and that's made the monument nice and big in the frame, and there aren't too many distractions around and about it. I'll be honest with you, I think that's a bit of a boring shot. The sun's very high in the sky already, or about an hour and a half after sunrise, and it's a blue sky, it's very clear. And there's not really a lot of interest in that shot. You might even say that it's a bit of a record shot or even a snapshot, not really what us landscape photographers are looking for. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and try and find some limestone that I can include as foreground interest. I found my first potential shot. I found a small piece of limestone quite close to the monument. I'm not really sure about this shot. I've got the sun off to the side to try and add a little bit of texture, create a little bit of shadow, but the light is very, very harsh. I've got the polarizer on the front of the camera, and that helps to keep the glare down that you get reflecting off of the rocks. Now, I'm nice and low to the ground, and so I've got the wide angle lens on to try and accentuate as much of that foreground as possible. I'm actually at 16mm, which is the widest I can shoot at. Like I say, I'm not really sure about this shot. So what I'll do is I'll have a look at it when I get back in Lightroom, try and make my mind up, and then I will post up my verdict onto Twitter. I wasn't happy with that first composition at all. I don't think the rocks in the foreground really added anything to the image. So what I've done is I've come a little bit further round and tried to find a more pleasing arrangement of rocks and limestone. And I think I've got something that has a little bit of potential. And because I've come round a little bit, rather than getting side lighting, I'm starting to get a little bit of backlighting, and I think that that has improved the image even more. At this point, I think I should talk a little bit about focusing. Now, I always focus manually when I'm using a tripod, and when I'm not using any foreground interest, I focus on the primary subject. But when I am including foreground interest, I tend to focus about a third of the way up the frame. Now, when you're focusing, it's important to remember that the area of sharpness extends in front of your point of focus as well as behind, and so it never pays to focus too closely to the camera. I quite like that second shot. I think it's a big improvement over my first composition. But what I want to do now is try and accentuate that foreground by putting the camera into portrait orientation to create an even greater sense of depth. I really like this composition. When we're using foreground interest, what we're trying to do is to lead the eye up from the bottom of the frame up towards the main subject. And I think this does this really well. And it's not hurt by the fact that I've managed to find a piece of limestone that kind of curves around ever so slightly towards the monument. So I think if I want to make the most of using foreground interest in future, I'm going to have to get into the habit of shooting in portrait orientation more often. That's just about it from me for today, but before I go, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who took part in my Push Your Lens to the Limit challenge. If you want to see all the photos that everybody took as part of that challenge, I've left a link to my website in the description below.